try and take me talking to it, but I don't think I would get you guys too much. That's why I moved you. Welcome. How do we feel? We made it. Kate's in my class. I'm so happy. Kate studied with me for many years ago. I had hair.
You did.
See the Lord. Oh, that's good. Let me shift you like one step, that way Kate's got a view, and then that should, yeah, cool. All right, so the way that I teach Tai Chi is in a couple different elements to it, what I call 5-element Tai Chi. One of the elements is stretching, it's called Daoyin stretching in Chinese. Then there's self-massage. Then there's a Qigong sequence or meditation sequence, if you want to think of it that way. Then there's the strength stuff, and then there is the part that you think Tai Chi is, which is old ladies moving in the park slowly, all doing the same move together. Right? So we'll get to that too. And so I start with the stretching, which is what we're going to do today. It'll probably take our whole time just to go through it. But then you'll have it, and the way I teach, some of you guys already know, it'll be a lot of talking. That's what you get. So nobody's signed up for anything yet, so you're not out any money, but that's what's going to happen. But once I get across what I want to get across in terms of the stretching, then let's say if we're in and we just do this next week or in 2 weeks or whatever we figure out as a group that might be coming together, we'll say, how you doing? We'll hug, how was your week? And then we'll do the stretching, which will take us 6 minutes. And then I'll have 54 minutes to talk a lot about the other thing I want to teach, which will then be introduced. You'll have it, you'll practice it for a week. And then week 3, I'll do the stretching for 5 or 6 minutes, and then the self-massage or whatever I taught next for a couple minutes, and then we'll have 51 minutes for me to talk a lot and teach the whole thing. And after a number of weeks, we'll have kind of introduced most of the basics. So then it really just becomes this first 15-20 minutes of every class, and then that gives us the rest of it to work on whatever your shoulder issue is, and whatever the last move is, and whatever your question was, and whatever your breathing challenge is, or whatever it is, and then we just kind of go and go and go. So the first 4 to 8 weeks, or whatever it happens to be, we're just kind of introducing these things in a lot of depth. Because what I found out in these arts is that people don't stick around. Probably because of our culture, right? We value different things. We value faster things and shinier things. And Tai Chi isn't shiny, it's not fast. So what I'd like to do is, knowing that people won't stick around, that's just how it goes. It's not a judgment about this group, it's just kind of how it goes. I'd rather have you leave and have had a deep understanding of a little bit of something that was taught, like the stretching. And then if I never see you again, at least you really pretty well got that and was presented to it, rather than me starting broadly and showing you a bunch of things and there's no real depth or understanding in them. And then you go away and like, we did something with a massage and there was some kind of stretch and we did something about breathing, but you don't really, you kind of have nothing. So that's kind of how I like to do it. Does that make a little sense? Okay, so first thing is standing. So we'll start with feet about shoulder width apart. Good. Weight evenly distributed. Feet parallel with one another. And if you look on the inside of your feet, you might line it up with the lines in the bamboo. Whether or not you're precisely X number of boards wide, you can still use that as a reference. So feet shoulder width apart, weight evenly distributed within and between the feet. Tai Chi is about balance, balance is about foundation. So this is what we're interested in, the feet, the feet, the feet, the feet. So when I want to get the weight evenly distributed between the 2 feet, most people kind of, yeah, I'm in the middle, I probably already was. But within the feet is a little bit more of a challenge. So what I like to do is kind of shift left, shift back, shift to the right, shift forward. I'm not, trying to see how far, but actually just kind of go through a little circle and really feel what it feels like to be forward, what it feels like to be on the outside edge, on the heels, and then kind of settle into a centeredness that I can feel, rather than my brain saying, yeah, I must be centered, let's move on. So I actually want to have a felt experience of the centering as well as what centered is. Next, the knees bend, at least a little bit. Once the knees bend, the work of holding up the body goes into the upper legs. And the upper legs will do work to keep you here. When the knees are straight, the weight goes right through the legs, and it's sort of bone stacked on bone, finding the foundation we set. And then the work of keeping me over those legs goes to my back, which it's not made to do. And my back will reliably remind me about 2 in the afternoon, maybe 3 if you're younger, maybe 1 if you're older, but it will start to say, hey, what have you been doing all day? And then I'll say, well, there's only 2 more hours of work, so shut up. And then I'll be an American, and I'll say, my back hurts, sit on the couch, have a beer, and nothing's gotten better, right? So by bending the knees, I'm allowing the legs to do the work of holding up the great weight of the body, which is the torso. Now your legs will tell you, hey, what's the big idea? You seem to be using me. And that's okay, they're made to do that. That's what they're for. They're made to hold you up. So you can feel that, but it's not a pain strain, it's just work. And they get tired, and they get stronger, and they get healthier, but they're not gonna give out. You'll probably give up on your legs before they give out on you, right? So the knees are bent at least a little bit. Now, the tailbone is normally in about this position. And what I'd like for the tailbone to do is be, I'm exaggerating a lot, is to be in this position. But I'm not going to do that by pitching my pelvis around. What I want to do is soften the buttocks and feel the tailbone sink down. Soften the pelvic floor. Release the buttocks. Let the tailbone start to sink like a leaf frozen in a pond. And in the spring, the leaf starts to sink because the ice is released. So softening the buttocks, and a lot of times I'll kind of sort of do this to like, are they soft? And just use your finger a little bit until you're kind of more familiar without having to touch. So we should be able to feel that the tailbone starts to sink a little bit. And as the tailbone sinks, it actually kind of goes this way a little bit. It doesn't just do this, and it doesn't pivot the way I first showed you. It kind of sinks and goes a little forward, the tip of it going forward. So I kind of think of this like a J. A J is mostly the story of down, up to down, but there's also a little more. It's not an I. It's a little more to the story. And so it's not the main theme, this, but it's mostly sink, but there's a little bit of forward, and this should feel for us that we lengthen or flatten the small of the back to some extent, which is not a thing I'm trying to do, it's a thing I notice when I soften the buttocks and the pelvic floor and the tailbone sinks. Right? A lot of us end up pretty lordotic, and then we can kind of feel as that tailbone moves, a little flattening, lengthening of the spine, flattening of the back. Feel okay? Yeah. So check back in on the knees. Have they pitched forward? Are they tightening? A lot of times, I'll get my feet right, then I'll get my knees good, and watching my knees now, when I start to move the tailbone, my knees have gone somewhere. So I want to now just kind of come back to the knees. Are they where I asked them to remain, or do I want to start over? And if I have to start over, no problem. Next, spine is straight. If you're not sure what that means, just picture your grandmother in the room, right, or your principal, right, and you just straighten the spine. Right? Shoulders softening, I like to think of them as melting, softening, like warm in the sun. And warm for people often kind of helps them soften away the stress too. Softening the shoulders, let the arms fall. Next, the head is suspended by a string as though from the sky or above. And a hint for you where that string is, coming from here. No, here. So the string is about there. You feel how your neck's an extension there. It's hard to tell maybe. Yeah. So about from here. You were kind of lifting more from the front. You should kind of do something more like that, right? So one thing, sorry about that, I didn't see the breath. So one thing, there's about where you're coming from. One thing to notice is that when you have the head lifted by the string, you kind of will come, just trying to see the top of your ear to find the point, is that you'll find, here's the point, that you'll naturally find the horizon from that. Hey, so if I was to lift from in front, I can still see the horizon, but my eyes are kind of aiming for it. I can feel them looking down. And if I was to lift from the front, or I guess from the back, I didn't change it, from the back, then my eyes kind of aim up to see where the horizon is. So it isn't about where is the horizon and can you see it. It's more about if I get everything in alignment, I should pretty well just naturally find it. Just by opening my eyes, it'll be right there. Okay? Good. So that is how to stand. There are a couple of reasons that I teach it, but one is that the standing is the sort of the mother practice in Tai Chi, learning how to stand. And it's actually one of the practices just to be standing, to get into the standing and to be standing. But, man, that sounds boring. Really, what do I do tomorrow? Yeah, stand. Sifu, I've been standing for months. What? Stand. Right? And especially, that was boring to the Chinese. It's definitely boring to Americans. So what I do is I teach the standing like this, and then I get you doing other things, like stretching, so your focus is on something else. But really, my DBS plan is to get you to practice standing while you get to think about how you're stretching something. So I do want to keep coming back to where are the feet, where are the knees, how's the tailbone, are the shoulders melting, do you have the string, is your back straight, all that kind of stuff. The other reason that I teach you how to stand is that it sets up a really nice authoritative dynamic of I'm definitely the teacher here, I'm the guy who taught you how to stand, so you'll do what I say from now on. So, wait a minute, aren't you the guy? Yeah. So now that we've done the standing, let's take a step out, and I'll just kind of talk you through it again.
Should I be feeling standing in my calves and in my feet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, very nice, yeah. My teacher said that if you can't afford to study Tai Chi, you should throw out every chair that isn't a bench, you know. And like, oh wow, you have to work differently to sit in a bench than you do in a chair. And he's like, you know, and that's similarly to the standing, like you feel where the work is. But it shouldn't be in the shoulders and the lower back and the middle back and the neck. Those things actually have a support that you've consciously built. So, and now that they're put into alignment, they can find their way into it. And then in feeling support, they can relax, right? Like everybody relaxes once they find where their support is, right? You know, once the maitre d' remembers your name, you're like, hey, I can relax. I'm getting taken care of, you know. Once you get back to mom's house, before you stay too long, And you're like, oh, this is kind of nice. Like she's asking, she knows what I like, and and you relax differently. So just knowing that there's the support, you relax into it. However, we have to consciously design the support, and then we have to consciously return to it, because it isn't just a Jenga stack that I can just leave there and it just stays. That's what those blocks do. I have to kind of, okay, oh yeah, that was starting to fade. I was starting to kind of get lazy here. My butt went out or whatever. So I have to kind of return to it. Okay, so feet shoulder width apart, weight evenly distributed within and between the feet. Knees bent at least a little bit. Buttocks soft, pelvic floor soft, such that you begin to maybe feel the tailbone sink a little, maybe even kind of tip forward a tiny bit from its tip. Spine straight. That's not being in the Marines, right? It's just spine straight. Shoulders releasing, softening, melting. Hands hanging at the side, head suspended from above as though by a string, such that we can pretty well find the horizon naturally, with ease. Good. Next, we'll lift the wrists up without using the shoulders. And first stretch. This is how every class starts. I'll stand, and we'll be doing this in minute 1. Okay. Now, what I'm not doing here is moving my hands. Okay, that's the face I was hoping to see. That's just for my own entertainment. So, what I am doing is thinking of the 2 bones in the forearm, and I'm changing their relative position, sort of like a rolling pin rolls. These 2 bones are the only 2 bones in the body that change position healthy, when you're healthy. Like in Kung Fu, we can change a lot of bones' positions, but these 2 can actually change their position, and that's what I'm doing. So by my saying I'm not moving my hands, I'm telling you where my mind is. My mind is in my forearms, and I kind of feel like sort of rolling pin style. Now the effect is that the hands move and they waggle in the wrists and the fingers. But if you start to get that, you'll feel much different in the hands than you probably did when you were mimicking what it looked like I was doing. So my mind is in the forearms, and you'll notice that as I do this, I'm opening to the sides and then back to the front, and my elbows don't much move. Right, so my elbows aren't coming out here. I'm not really moving from the shoulders and the chest. I'm rotating and leaving the point of the shoulder about the same. So out, in, out. Next, circles. You good? Yeah. Thank you, Ray. Circles back the other way. So check in as you do the circles. Is the weight shifting in your feet? Does it rhythmically go to the heels, go to the toes? Does it stay where you asked it to stay? And so this is a subtle challenge to what we asked of our foundation, our feet, our legs. Right? I'll just go back forward again. Usually I just go forward then back. But feeling into the feet. You've kind of come a little narrow, Sally. If you widen your left foot or straighten your left foot now a little. There you go. Good. And then twisting side to side. So how are those knees? Have they moved? How's the weight? Has it shifted? How are the feet? Is the weight where you asked it to be? Have you starting to tighten the butt? Hey Ray, before you go, what's your 1 sentence or phrase of advice for these
Patience.
newling martial artists?
Patience. It's going on my tombstone.
It's already on your tombstone, that's why you're not in it. It just says patience. Coming soon. Stretching up. Ray's been doing martial arts for like 55 years. So if you can, get a little advice and see what he says. So I'm just stretching up and out to the corner. But again, have I shifted my weight? Have my knees moved? I've asked them to be somewhere, and now I'm expecting to do that. So here. Good, so the stretches, there's 4 parts to the stretch series that we'll do. That was the end of part 1. So part 1 and part 3 are related. The first one is the upper body muscle group stretch, which we just did. Part 3 is the lower body muscle group stretch, not surprising. And when we do the muscle group stretches, Vladimir might be feeling a particular one in a particular place, and Alexis thinks she's doing it wrong because she feels it somewhere else. And you and Sarah both might feel it in this other place. Because we're stretching, offering the stretch to a group of muscles, people will tend to feel it where they're weak or less articulation. And then through those stretches over time, that weak thing will probably become lengthened or less painful or less inflamed or stronger, or range of motion changes. And then you might start feeling that same stretch just somewhere else, maybe where Alexis has been feeling it all along. So when I do those stretches, I don't say, make sure you feel it, because different people will feel it in different places. And so know that going in. So muscle group stretch for the upper body and lower body is 1 and 3. Step 2 is head to toe individual muscle stretches, which we're going to do now. We're going to start with the neck and go down to the toes. And step 4 is connective tissue stretching, where we focus on the wrists, the sinews in the wrists. So that'll be last, and I don't know if we'll have time today to get into it, but that's where we'll be going. So let's check in on the standing. Feet shoulder width apart, weight evenly distributed within and between the feet. Knees bent at least a little bit. Buttocks soft, tailbone sinking, spine straight, shoulders releasing, head suspended, eyes on the horizon, breathing in the nose, breathing out the mouth. Okay. So the neck, we're going to be stretching front to back, but rather than simply doing this, I'm going to start on one side and front, back, and then slowly working my way to the other side, kind of. In my case, my right ear is heading over towards my right shoulder. Now, you may notice that if you open your mouth, your neck will go back a little bit further. That's a fun one to practice, because I never ask my students to open their mouths, so enjoy it while you can. Good. Front to back. And the next one I'm going to do, I'll kind of show you in profile. I'm going to go ear to shoulder, but rather than simply doing this, I'm going to start forward and work my way back. I could have started back and gone forward, I just have to pick one. So let the chin fall, don't reach it, don't try and go as far as you can go, let the chin fall. And bring the ear in the direction of one shoulder, and then the other. You're not trying to touch the shoulder, you're not moving the shoulder to the ear. And then slowly bring the chin away from the chest, breathing in the nose. Have your knees start to straighten. Right. A lot of times we have these less than fully conscious shifts away from work. The English language calls it lazy. Work side to side. Next one is turning the head side to side, so kind of saying no. And again, rather than simply doing this, I'm going to start down, and this will look like the other one until you focus clearly. But this is a different stretch than the one we just did. So we'll let the chin fall, and we'll all kind of do this together, so we're on the same page. Just start to watch me as you're doing this. So let the chin fall, and you're going to keep the chin near the chest and move that chin towards your left shoulder. And stretch with your eyes as well. Really look where you're going. and let the chin come back in the direction of the sternum, and then along over to the other side. Then let the chin come a little further from the chest, and then sweep across, stretching with the eyes, reaching with the eyes, looking with the eyes. A little bit across, turn, and probably around now you're mostly looking at the horizon, the way you normally say no. Chris, do you remember how to do this one? You're married, I figured you might have forgotten how to say no. I don't know how well she's trained you into it. The only way you move your neck is up and down. So I'm slowly here bringing the chin further from the chest until mostly I'm looking at the ceiling. And then whether or not you can do this, I want to put this visual in your mind. Eventually what we're aiming for is to look at the ceiling, and then look at my heel behind my shoulder. Ceiling, 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 heel. Which is not me challenging you, I just want to give you the visual for where you're heading in the stretch. Okay, now the head goes around in a circle, nice easy circle. Now when we think about the head moving the way it's been doing here, we know that our center of gravity is shifting, right? Not by a lot, right? It's 8 pounds or whatever it is. But has this changed the dynamics in your feet? Has there been a subtle shift to your heels or your toes as your head moves? And what we'd like to assure ourselves of is that we put our feet where we want them, and we're conscious and considering them throughout. So even though there's this subtle challenge to how I'm standing, I am staying where I decided to stand. Okay. So next I'll bring one arm across and grasp the elbow and draw the grasped elbow towards the other shoulder or collarbone or chest. And it could be a little lower if that's working for you. Often I'll do this one this way, it's the same stretch. I just like to reach this way. And then I'll let the arm swing until that same arm that was stretched swings back. And then I'm going to help it go down my spine this way. And then I'll often, as you guys figured out, we'll often just kind of do it here so I get a little more stretch there. But really I'm interested in stretching here. So again here, have you brought your back into extension? Have you straightened the knees? Or is your weight on your heels? Did you stop breathing? Are you only breathing in the chest? So now we have this swinging happening, and our mind is off of the posture, like you're trying to get the stretch right. So did the posture start to fail? Did the butt tighten? Did the weight kind of shift to one side? Did the hip kick out? And so what I'm trying to do is, besides the stretching, is offer a subtle challenge to the posture that varies as we go. So did you go through this one? That's it, there you go. And then let it swing. And did you feel how your knees straightened and bent as it swung? Yeah. Good, and then shoulder circles. So generally the first Tai Chi class is basically your first test. Like if you can get through what will seem boring to most people, this might be for you. But you could start to feel music. So hands on the hips, that'll stop, whoever's that is. I guess it will. Now we're all ready to dance and the music's not. We should have all just kind of broken out and something. Wouldn't that be great choreographed? But Okay, so hands on the hips and circles. So take a look at my knees as I'm doing this. They're right where I put them 20 minutes ago. Okay. So feel the weight in the feet. Feel the knees not moving. So you can bend them a little, Kate, and then kind of just feel them sit there, unchanging. So I'm going to do this in profile now because I'm not doing a capital letter D, which might look like this: circle, straight, circle. I'm trying to do a circle. So I'm coming back a little, not pushing myself, and the circle may be smaller because of how far back I can go compared to forward. And then the whole time, I feel like those knees have nowhere else to go. Back the other way if you haven't already. So a whole lot of this art is kind of trying to cultivate your consciousness and then plant it somewhere, right? And we start by planting it in our body, like in the feet and the knees, for example, and then eventually it becomes planted in your partner and the greater world and the application that you're doing. And so a lot of this is really just, can we collect, like a rain barrel style, can we collect our consciousness and then let it easily find its way where it's going to be fruitful. So you can have a rain barrel and you have to go out and hand pump it, or you can design a rain barrel where when it reaches a point, gravity feeds over to, it's much more easeful. And so we want to try and do that here, where it's not a whole lot of, when you get in there and tinker, but let me just set up a situation whereby it performs because of the structure that I've built. Okay, so we've done the circles. So let's bring the feet together now. First time we've moved them. Yeah. And let the knees bend. And probably most of you have an idea what I'm about to do because you've seen athletics, right? So what I'm not doing is leaning on my knees like somebody after a half marathon, like this, right? Because my knees are not designed to support weight. They're designed to move the leg, the two different parts in relation to each other, and then to pass weight through without getting caught up in them, right? They also don't like twisting and shearing and turning. They just don't really like those things. So what I'm doing is I'm placing my hands, can I borrow you, Chris? I'm placing my hands on my knees the same way that I would put my hands on my great-great-grandmother's face in hospice. I've always loved you, right? I'm not gonna, that's not, right? So what I'm doing with my palms is how are you, sweeties? My God, I love you. There's only 2 of you, and I was planning to live a long, long time, right? I'm not sure if my insurance covers. My Uncle Ray, who had his knee replaced, seems grumpy. This is just, God, how is everybody down there? You guys good? I am not ever going to do anything you don't like. So my palms are in this position, the way that, again, your picture, putting your back of your hand on a sick kid's forehead or something, right? It's connected, it's gentle, it's listening, it's loving, it's patient, right? Maybe you can think of some other words, but that's why I say hospice. You can probably quickly get an idea that your softer tone when you're in hospice, talking to anybody, you're probably moving slower, you're a little more patient with somebody who's grumpy, you know what I mean? And so what my palms are doing here is they're listening to the knees. Is there anything at all you guys need, right? Any complaints? Is everything good? Okay? So that's what we're doing with the palms. And then I'm just circling them slowly and small. Try and bring the feet together. There you go. And so I'm just letting them move and lubricate and have a chance to recognize they're being heard and say their piece. Right? I'm not doing big circles which add all this shearing energy to the knees. I'm not adding weight to them, where I'm adding strain to them and also sort of blotting out any communication. So I'm soft, listening, patient, connected, and back the other way. Yeah, nice. Good, and then we'll inhale up through the nose. And we'll shift the weight to your left leg. Open the right. Step the heel out of the left foot. Good. So my weight's on my right leg, my rear leg. So that knee is bent, the knee is over the ball of the foot, and that is not going to change. That's where my weight is. Because I just developed this great relationship with my knees, right? And they're temperamental, because I've seen older people, right? So now exhale through the mouth, come down, keeping the weight on the rear leg, the rear knee not moving. And if you can reach the toe, we're going to grasp the toe, but only if that front knee remains straight. Drawing the toes in towards the row kneecap. Often my free hand will be on the foundation knee, and again, just listening and paying attention, but not supporting me in terms of weight. Breathe while you're down here. Inhale through the nose, come up. Nice. And come back. I just switched to the other side. I just did it fast, I didn't talk it through. So if I can't touch the foot, I can do the same stretch just by pulling the toes towards the knee. But if I can reach, I like to, because that's good for me in other aspects. And if I can sort of reach, not quite reach my toe, maybe in general, maybe just on a given day, I still will come down and then do the stretch so that my center of gravity change and I, get a little bit more cardio from here. So if you can, exhale on your way down, stretch and breathe while you're stretching. A lot of people will forget to breathe. Nice flat there. And inhale through the nose to come up. And that's a basic Tai Chi lesson. When we fold, we exhale. If we are folded, like we're down there, we are breathing. And when we come up, the inhalation leads the return to erect posture. So I'm going to do this in profile so you can see it. The next one, I'm going to just set my foot behind me with my weight on the front leg. And if my weight is on a leg, the knee is bent. So what I'm not doing here is cantilevering, right? And I'm also not reaching so far that I maybe kind of have to cantilever, or what a lot of people do is they'll kind of rooster their chest forward, or they'll bring their butt out. I want to feel that I'm just on one leg, like when I was doing this, and I just happen to have this foot back. So good posture, eyes on the horizon, tailbone sinking, the rear leg, pick a leg here, Alexis, so good. I'm sure you had it, I just couldn't quite see it. So pay attention to that foundation knee, right? It's in the place you want it, the weight's in that foot where you want it, and I'm going to circle the rear foot. And what I'm doing with the rear foot is I'm going toenails down, toenails up, toenails down, toenails up. And this is to stretch the instep, the toes, and the ankle. And just on the calf prior to this. Back the other direction. Switch. Circles. this can be a little less fun, you know, if you're barefoot or you're on a hard floor, you know. But all my weight's here, so it shouldn't be too bad. But often if you have shoes on, they won't flex to really get the stretch either. So again, you know, what's happened to my weight? What's happened to the foundation knee? Have I started to breathe here? Am I looking down or at the horizon? So I want to just be practicing my standing. I'm still vertical. I'm still in this consciously directed self-supportive structure. And I'm stretching here. Okay. All right, so that's neck to toes, head to toes. Step 2 of the series. So now we're going to do the 2 lower body stretches. I'm going to do them here first. So the stretch will look like this, and I'll teach you through it in a moment. And this is the same stretch. You can see how narrow I am because of the red and white. And this is the same stretch, just more stable and easier. It's not also particularly challenging my balance. So if you happen to want to do this, great, but feel free to be a little bit wider. And you can, I'll borrow you again. This could also be practiced, you know, with something stable, you know, probably not a person, no judgment about you, but, you know, not on a chair with wheels, you know, but maybe a wall or a door jamb or a heavy couch or something like that. And I might not actually be leaning on it, but maybe I feel like, okay, it's there if I need it, because we're not trying to test you. So we're gonna have the weight on the front leg, the rear leg reaching back, and you'll notice that my knee stays forward on the front leg. It doesn't start to drift back. And the back foot is so far back that the heel has to be up. Moreover, it's so far back, keep forward on the front knee. Shift forward a little bit, there you go. It's also so far back that there's actually no way I could ever reach my heel to the ground. Right? I think you probably could, Yeah, there you go, yeah. So my weight's forward. The stretch here is to reach the heel to the ground, knowing it'll never get there, because then the stretch would end. And also reach the back of the knee towards the sky. So it probably doesn't look like I'm doing much, but in my mind, that heel's reaching that, does anybody know what that's called? Knee pit is my favorite. Nobody knows it's the popliteal fossa, but I really like knee pit. So reaching the heel to the soil, reaching the back of the knee to the sky. Breathing while you're there. Inhale. Come on up. And my bet is if we pulled you, everybody feels this in the glutes and the abductors and the soleus and wherever you get it. So. Good. Just switching to the other side. Got another visitor. He's been doing it longer than Ray. I think he's been doing martial arts for 65 years. You know how you have either, you have like maybe a day where you look at the same thing optimistically and then another day you look at the same thing pessimistically? Ed is that for me. Most days he's just an inspiration, and other days he's like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Why do you have so much more energy than me and you're 80? Come on in, Ed. All right, so we'll come up. Let's do the next one.
I'm stuck at the phone store.
Come on in, stretch. Ed, this is everybody.
How do you do?
Everybody,
I
this
know
is
some
Ed.
of everybody. At least I know one of everybody.
Can I quote you on that? Okay, so last stretch. Okay, so this can be tougher in socks, so just bear that in mind. And that's because there's nothing scarier than an unscheduled split. So So feet shoulder width apart, and then really, really farther. Feet straight ahead. And when I do the stretch, what I want to do is make sure that my feet stay straight and my feet stay flat. That's the idea. So I'm going to shift to one side and then sink. Good. Shift to the other side and sink. Shift, keep them flat though. Keep them flat. Right heel. Good. Shift and sink. So normally what I'll do is I'll set my hand on my center, help me breathe to there, and then this is helping my mind reach and lengthen here.
Are we bending
I can't
forward
quite see
or?
this. You can bend forward if you want, sure. And then inhale. So the way I come up is I just push each foot towards the other a bunch of times until I'm up. If you rock climb, it's like chimneying. Actually, it's like chimneying even if you don't rock climb. It's like people say, like, if I don't see you tomorrow, have a great. Oh, so if you do see me, I'll just say that. So, what I don't want people to do is be here and then summon a lurch to get out. Because again, that's where things get pulled and strained. So I'd rather be patient, even if it feels a little silly, to come back to where my feet are under me. So that is the upper body muscle group, head to toe, lower body muscle group. And normally in a class, that whole thing would take 3 minutes or whatever, 4 minutes. And then we do the wrists, which take another minute or so. And what I generally do is I teach people the wrist series because they're much more complex than a lot of these. Kind of one every week until you learned all 4 or 5, and then you just have that sequence. And you know, as Ed knows, you just come into class and we do them all, and we do the wrists, and then we move on to the other parts of the class. Questions? That's interesting. My advanced students know that they should ask a question if I ever say that, because even if they don't have a good question, it shuts me up.
Okay, I have a not so good
So there we go,
question.
good.
When you're doing this thing,
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's me that I slow down the longer I do it, like it gets slower.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
normal?
fine. No, that's totally fine. Sure. Sure, you might kind of
So I
settle
feel
in.
like I start losing it after a while. I have it at first and then
It
it
may
starts
help
not
to understand
working
it
as
as you may be actually just going into it excitedly, which might be
Oh.
a hint about your personality. Maybe that registers as the way you might do things. So it isn't so much about slowing down as you run out of the excitement fuel that you bring into something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that might click for you.
Yeah.
But if it goes slower, what I'm interested in is that we're doing it well. So that, you know, that's the idea. So what I want to do now is just review all that, but I'll do it more like in a normal class pace. I'll probably remind you of a few things, but we'll just kind of go through it. That way your body's, okay, I've seen this a couple of times, I'm starting to remember. And what I would say is practice, and when you practice, don't fret about, wait, was this after, was it, or you know, you're at the end, you say, oh, I never did this one. I'm not worried about the order of it. There is a particular order, but I'm not trying to get you to memorize anything. Generally, people just, the order of things just sort of accumulates as they practice. So I don't recommend putting any particular mental energy in learning the order. I'll do it the same way every time, and you'll just pick it up as you get it. And maybe if this comes out, it would just be to follow along at home as well. So, okay, so here we go. Feet shoulder width apart. Weight evenly distributed within and between the feet. And there are a bunch of first timers here. What's your advice to the martial artists just starting?
Don't be, don't think of self. Don't worry about what you look like.
pretty good. All right.
Experience speaks. I know.
Yeah, that's good. So, feet shoulder width apart, weight evenly distributed within and between the feet, knees bent, buttocks soft, tailbone sinking, spine straight, shoulders softening, melting, releasing, head suspended from above as though by a string, eyes on the horizon, float the wrists, see how quickly it goes, and forearms at Sally speed. Good. And then circles. Again, feet, weight in the feet, knees. Circles the other way. Good. The knees from moving. Yeah, yeah. This is the harder one. Yeah. Stretching up, knees don't straighten. Trying to help the mind inhabit the body. Suffuse the body, inhabit the body, direct the body. Good. So I'm going to go through the head to toe now, but I want to point something out. The way that people tend to think of stretching is that you take a, let's say, range of motion, and you move it to its maximal expression. And then you try and get a little more. That's what stretching sounds like, right? I try and get a little bit more, and I try and do 101% or 106% or whatever the way you do it. And that is not the type of stretching we're doing. Right? What we're doing is 60, 65, 70, 75, maybe 80% of what we can do in every stretch. So in none of these am I allowing my ego to say, oh, the guy next to me really read, I used to do that in high school, right? We're not inviting our ego to say, let's see if I can still, right? Tai Chi is this practice of yin and yang, right? And that's the sort of worldview that the world is made up of pairs, right? Two sides of a coin, peanut butter and jelly, whatever. It's made out of things that pair. And that TWO is not the same as TOO. So there's no place in Tai Chi for TOO. Anything. To anything. So it's always to TWO, not to TOO. And that starts here when we do stretching. I'm not trying to reach very far. I'm going at this very reasonable, easeful, non-competitive, paying attention to my body, 60, 70-ish %, something like that. I'm not even like making a specific number where now my brain says, let's find 72.3. No, it's somewhere in there. It's just not the whole thing, right? And so as we go through all these, I'm learning how to do the stretches and be present in the body and find stability. Once I've learned how to do the stretch and I am sort of pre-stretched, maybe we could think of it here, you could then later, when you're warmed up and ready, hey, I do want to find my range of motion and find 100, that's a different type of stretching, but you could take all of these and push them, but it's not what I'm talking you through in Tai Chi, right? So there's a home for all of these as a, how far can I go? But it's not what I'm trying to do. The way I think of this is, with your firstborn, you know, you're downstairs making coffee and you're looking at the clock and thinking of the school bus and, you know, it takes this long to, and then you go upstairs and you, hey honey, pretty soon, maybe we'll start getting up there, buckaroo, at the school bus and making French toast with blueberries and the orange juice that you love. I got, you know. And then maybe 5 minutes later, you kind of creak the door open and you wrestle the blankets and hey, I get up soon. The French toast is almost ready. You're gonna be getting cold and you're so adorable in bed and don't have much longer. And then you walk quietly downstairs and the kid kind of moves a little. And then 10 minutes later, you're like, look, you really gotta get up, right? Because it's beautiful and loving. By your fourth kid, right? You just throw, you know, a Timberland boot at the ceiling in the kitchen, like, get up! You know, like, we gotta, you know, like, I can't do that whole thing, right? Just get up, you know, you got 1 minute for the bus, here's, you know, French toast stick in your mouth and out there, right? You think that the first way is how to do it and the way it's going to last for your whole life. But then by your second kid or your second month with the kid or whatever, like, okay, there's another way to do it. And so the stretches are like that first kid. Like, how you doing, buddy? I was just thinking that maybe pretty soon you'd be getting up and having breakfast, maybe running to the bus, and you have your swimming lesson later today. And so I'm going through all of the parts of the body saying, hey buddy, I love you. How you doing? Did you sleep well? I was thinking maybe, not just now, but in a little while doing some Tai Chi, and I just want to kind of make sure you're not too tuckered out. And so everything I'm doing, I kind of have that attitude of, I'm not saying now it's not a fire alarm. Well, pretty soon I'm going to ask you to do some stuff. So maybe start thinking about rolling out of bed. And so that's my focus, my consciousness coming to every part of the body, part by part. None of them are fire alarm, bucket of water on your head, pull the sheets off, and you know, it's not that, right? So every stretch that I'm doing, it's this kind of loving checking in, patient, and therefore nothing's pushed, okay? So neck, front to back, working our way from side to side. Sometimes I'll go there and then come back, sometimes I'll just do one. And then ear to shoulder, and then as we do that, slowly working our way back, or if we had started back, slowly working our way forward. Good. Looking right, looking left, and slowly turning. Good. Circles. Back the other way. Good. Arm across. Release. Arm down. Checking on the knees, Sally. Good. Good. And Tai Chi is this practice of balance, and balance is not just a noun, it's a verb. So, constantly checking in on the balance, constantly balancing, and one of the most accessible places to do that is in the physical body. But as we develop a physical support, we start to be able to address our psychological balance or imbalance, as the case may be, Sarah. Emotional balance, mental balance, maybe spiritual balance. And so I'm checking in on the body's balance. Circles the other way, no weight shift, knees haven't moved. Now that you're dizzy, we'll cross the feet. Inhale up to lengthen the spine. Exhale down through the mouth. Again, not T-O-O, just wherever you go is fine. Breathe while you're down here. Feel that in the back calf. Inhale through the nose to come up, don't hurry. And switch. Exhale. Inhale through the nose. Good. Good. Nice. Circle. Listening to the knees. Getting used to listening to the knees. What language do they speak besides vowel? Circle the other way. Soften the shoulders. Right? This is a different challenge to the weight. Inhale up through the nose. one foot, step the other foot out. That rear foot now, the knee is bent and it won't change. Exhale down, stretching. Inhale through the nose. Exhale down, reaching for the toes. Breathe while you're down there. And then inhale through the nose to come up. Really feel your foundation in that unmoving bent leg. Circles. Try and roll the toes upside down, Chris. Yeah, there you go. Back the other way. Think about that right knee, Alexis. Right? Like commit to unchanging this there. Your left knee's bent, Kate, right? Doesn't have to be bent a lot. I just couldn't tell with your pants. I just want to make sure it's bent. As long as it's bent, the force goes through it. And, you know, you could certainly bend a lot. But, and I don't know. We didn't do the other side.
No,
Ray was here when they started. And
Oh.
he did a little bit of it.
oh,
And I was telling him, Ray's been doing martial arts forever. And then you came in and I was like, never mind, Ray. Ray's a
Newcomer.
yeah, Ray's a beginner.
Yes,
Dad's been doing it forever. Good. Okay, and then we'll do the two lower body stretches. Reaching the heel, reaching the back of the knee. Breathe while you're down here. It's okay if you wanted to support here. Inhale up. Inhale up. And then last one. Up to the side. Switch, that's good. Keep your right foot straight though. Next time you shift, you'll be able to straighten it. That was good, Chris. Nice, Sarah. Good. Very good. And then chin me up. Okay. How do we feel? There's a lot to remember, but hopefully the themes get through. Feet, knees, alignment, and then keeping the mind where we want it. The particular stretches we'll repeat every time, and like right there, that took us whatever 5 minutes just to go through, and it'll go through like that, and then there'll be time for other stuff. Any questions?
Creakiness?
Creakiness?
Is that thought to maybe go away? My neck especially is like crunching every time
Uh-huh.
I do it.